Go for it, Sayyid.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters, which have joined us for this evening's hangout, or this morning, depending on whichever part of the world you are. Today, inshallah, we will be discussing misconceptions about Shias, and several brothers have come together to discuss this topic area. So, if I have a quick introduction, we've got familiar faces. Sayyid Ali is with us. We've got brother Ryan is with us. I've got a new brother's here, brother Daniel.
Assalamu alaikum.
And myself, my name is Sayyid Hassan Bukhari. Inshallah, we will try to go over this topic for approximately an hour or so, but it could go longer depending on how much content we're discussing. The real purpose why we've decided to discuss this topic is, alhamdulillah, we've done a number of shows now on Bayat al-Ghadeer. The feedback's been good, but we've had a number of questions which brothers from Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah have asked us privately. They've texted us, called the brothers and asked specific questions. So we thought it'd be useful if we actually dedicated tonight's hangout to discuss those very questions and respond, because they're typical type of questions that come up. They're not in any way based on any sort of agenda or bias, I don't think so. I think people genuinely want to know what they are and they're looking for answers. We need to stress that one of the reasons why this channel was set up was to counter the negative propaganda that is thrown about Shia Muslims. Whatever sort of media, whether it's through the internet articles or via video channels, via YouTube, whatever sorts of media is being utilized, a great deal of it is anti-shia. So that's really one reason why this channel was put together for that purpose. And we thought, well, now is the time to try and address those sort of misconceptions. I'm the oldie of the group, much older than the brothers here, and I can certainly recall from my university days, having to deal with a great deal of prejudice when there was the Salafi movement was very, very strong in university, and it was the sort of problems that brothers and sisters are having now in universities, where our tulbas were taken away, they were thrown away, thrown in the bin. We'd have all sorts of stupid comments and questions. Those haven't changed. I still recall that once a Salafi came up to me and asked my confirmation that is it true that on the 9th of Muharram, I'm finding it hard to even say this, on the 9th of Muharram, you guys switch off the lights and have sexual intercourse with the women in the mosque. These are the sorts of things that, you hear these in the third world countries, which are said in the Indian subcontinent. But this was a guy born, bred here, asking me such an absurd question. So, I mean, that sort of stupidity goes on. Even the other day, a sister contacted me mentioning that just recently, she was at university and her sister was praying salat with the turba, and a woman came up to her and spat in her face. So you understand, these are the reasons why the channel has been put together to try and deal with these sort of this prejudice, these sort of misconceptions, and sort of essentially, inshallah, we're trying to knock them on the head. People need to understand that the only version of Islam is not just the version which is sort of shouted on certain speaker corners. There is another version of Shiism, of Islam. It's called Shia Islam, and inshallah ta'ala, we will try to present it in the best way that we can. Sayyid Ali Imam, do you want to add anything?
No, Sayyid, you've definitely introduced the topic.
Okay.
Very well.
So I think without sort of any sort of further break or anything, Ryan, if I could ask you the first question, one of the questions which is quite common that's asked to us, who exactly are the Shias? When we say that we are Shia Muslims, what does that mean to you?
Thanks, guys. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks for having me on, guys. When I hear the word Shia, I try to look at the etymological root of the word, right? And also the Semitic root of the word, to try to understand what it means, how it's used, in the context that it is in the Quran. The Semitic root of shin, ya, ain is found a number of times in the Quran, and when translated in English, it's often to do with sects or followings or etc. The best, excuse me, sorry, there's an airplane going over my head at the moment. Sorry. But from my understanding and my extrapolations of how this word is used in the various forms, is more to do with partisanship. So when we say we are the Shia of Ali, some people will say follower, and it can be used in this context, but at the same time, it's best used as a party of Ali. Islam in itself is very dualistic. We have Tawheed, which is all about oneness and the unicity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we also have to look at the dunya and how the dunya works, and it works in a very dualistic manner. And if you look at how the Quran speaks of the believers or the mu'mineen and other groups such as the mushriks and the kafirs and etc., it paints a very clear picture of it's us and them all the time. So to identify as a Shia of Ali, if I pronounce that wrong, sorry if anyone tries to call me up on that later, my Arabic's not that flat, but that is to identify as a partisan of Ali. All right, Ali ibn Abi Talib, the son-in-law of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the Quran, it clearly states, that we don't divide into sects, as it's usually translated. But according to my understanding of the verse and the use of the word, it says don't divide into parties that show support for a certain individual or a certain group, right? It needs to be very, very clearly looked at here. It's in the plural tense, right? In the plural, it is referring to the plural. So we already were one united ummah under the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it was telling to not divide any further. Don't go any further. So we had the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we're all his Shia, right? Just as Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam was a Shia of Nabi Noah alayhi salam. This context runs throughout Islamic history. There's always a Shia that's on the haqq, that's always alongside the prophets, alongside their righteous followers, and etc. So when we saw the Islamic community eventually divide after the Prophet ﷺ's death, people started taking sides with different people. And we, as the Shia of Ali, we feel that to remain the Shia of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa is to remain the Shia of Ali and those who were his Shia. So for the Ithna Ashari school, we believe you had Imam Ali alayhi salam and his successors after him. This idea of sects and etc., it's used in a political manner to demonize the Shia just because we use the label, right? But even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used such a label for the prophets. So we need to really take away this stigma of the word. So from the Shia need to understand this first of all. So when these things are brought to them, like don't divide into sects, your Shia, it says clearly not to divide into sects, right? Or Shia. We need to be able to understand how to refute that and also show people from the Quran how it's also applicable to the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At the end of times, after the Day of Judgment, we will be gathered together, the Shia of Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, and all of that includes all of the prophets. All of them will be on one side. Okay, so we feel like we're doing that. Right, we still identify as Muslim. All right, just as everyone else that claims to be Muslim identifies as Muslim, but we also identify as the Shia of these certain individuals. And if you look back at these individuals, Sunni and Shia, or any other group, except for some small extreme groups, will identify all of our imams that we identify as Shia of were all pious individuals and learned. All right. So yeah, when I think of the word Shia, I honestly think of partisanship. It's a theme that's running throughout the Quran, whether the term is used all the time or not, and it's a term that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has used himself for his chosen prophets. I think that's all I can think of at the moment for that. But yeah.
Thank you, Brother Ryan, for that. Sayyid Ali, do you want to add anything?
No, I think he summed it up pretty well, to be honest with you. I think I'll pass on to Brother Daniel. Maybe he's got something to say, and then I'll probably conclude on that. But yeah, Daniel, go ahead, by all means, please.
Well, I think the Brother Ryan summed up pretty much important stuff. Maybe one thing that came to my mind is there is one particular ayah that some of our opponents like to bring up, where Allah says, I don't remind which ayah that is, but it says, those who became Shia. And he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this in a negative way. And our opponents are very keen to show that up all the time. They say, oh, there's the word Shia in Quran. But as Brother Ryan already said, it's also used in a positive way. So I think that's very important to outline this fact that there is not only this ayah. There is, as Brother Ryan said, Shiat Ibrahim, Shiat Nuh, Shiat Musa alayhim salam. So yeah, it's a neutral thing, and the soldiers of Muawiyah called themselves Shiat Uthman. So if there is any objection to us calling ourselves Shiat Ali, then they have to bring the same objection to the people of Muawiyah calling themselves Shiat Uthman.
That's correct. In fact, a point that is quite relevant here, Brother Daniel, is one of the very famous books in the Indian subcontinent, which was written against us, called Tohfa Isna Ashari by Shah Abdul Aziz Delvi, very much a revered work. Even he pinpoints, he goes, in his viewpoint, he goes, the true Shia were those that came in 37 Hijri, the Muhajirin and the Ansar, that sided with Ali, and their sign was they sided with him, they loved him, and they fought his enemies. Okay, now 37 Hijri was the year of the Battle of Siffin. So for him, it was the Sahaba. He defines the Sahaba as Shias, and those were the ones that fought Muawiyah, on siding with the Amir al-Mu'minin Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. So it shouldn't be viewed as a negative thing. He viewed it as a matter of pride, and he pins that as the origins. Okay, we could dispute that, but in all honesty, if you look at that definition now, one of them is they were opposed to his enemies. How has that changed now? We are, alhamdulillah, the same Shia. We love Imam Ali. We follow his teachings, and we separate ourselves. We do not associate with his enemies.
So just to add to that point as well, I mean, even if we go back to certain terminologies which a lot of Muslim groups use now today, you have like the Salafi movement, and you have the Deobandi movement, you have the Barelvi movement, you have all these different types of groups who all categorize themselves, after a particular person they follow. For example, even in the schools of thoughts, you might have somebody who's a Hanafi or a Maliki or a Hanbali. These are just terminologies used. But I mean, in general, what the brothers mentioned in terms of what the term Shia means from a historical perspective, this is, of course, this is something very important as well. But, again, I think it's the other point, the fact that, the Muslims have become divided. And ultimately, this divide was based on the fact on the legitimacy of leadership. Because, as Brother Ryan pointed out as well, one group aligned themselves with Imam Ali alayhi salam, and another group aligned themselves with Abu Bakr. Of course, one of the objections that, our brothers bring up is that, well, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he gave bay'ah, right? He gave bay'ah to Abu Bakr. So, I mean, I didn't want to go into this, but I think it's important that we bring up some traditions as well to kind of show that, not everything was hunky-dory after the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, passed away. Because one of the most important issues that occurred after the Prophet's demise was on the issue of inheritance. As Hassan Bahari knows, and that is related to the topic of Fadak. So Fadak was a piece of land that was gifted by the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, to his daughter Fatima, Assalamu alayha. Fatima, and peace and blessings be upon her, was the daughter of the Prophet, who was married to Imam Ali alayhi salam, who we believe to be the successor of the Prophet. So when the Prophet passed away, there was a dispute in terms of leadership, and a group of companions of the Prophet, they went and they gathered at a place called Saqifa Banu Saida. Saqifa Banu Saida was like a shed of some kind. Sahaba gathered, and they, whilst the Prophet was, his funeral arrangements were going on, while he was being washed and his body was being prepared for burial, a group of companions had abandoned him. Okay, and amongst the people who were included in being assigned the duty of looking after the Prophet's funeral was Imam Ali alayhi salam. As we know from history, Imam Ali alayhi salam, amongst a group of few other individuals, were busy washing the Prophet's body. Nevertheless, the Sahaba, they had left the Prophet's body. They went to this place called Saqifa Banu Saida, and they gathered there, and they disputed over the matter of leadership. Who should the leadership go to? Because at that time there was a bit of turmoil. You had different tribes coming forward, all trying to claim some sort of authority directly after the Prophet passed away, which goes into the other points of course, how important it is to have leadership there, because surely the Prophet would have foretold something. Surely in his knowledge he would have known that something as important as this, key to keeping the ummah undivided, that him not to nominate a successor. Anyway, I'm going to bring up a tradition related to this issue of Fadak, which was this land that was granted to the Prophet's daughter. You should be able to see my screen, Hassan Bahari. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it, yeah.
Yeah, you can see. Okay, great. Okay, so this is from the book Sahih Bukhari, which is you can purchase this from a lot of Islamic bookshops. It's also available online. So you can go to the website sunnah.com, as you can see from here, and it's a slightly long narration, so you just have to bear with me while I quickly read it for you. And this tradition is found in Sahih Bukhari. Yeah, the reference is all there for you. The English, volume 5, book 59, hadith number 546. Tradition goes, narrated Aisha, Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon her, sent someone to Abu Bakr when he was a Khalifa, asking for her inheritance of what Allah's Messenger had left her of the property bestowed on him by Allah from the fay, the booties gained without fighting in Medina, and Fadak, and what remained of the khums of Khaybar booty. On that, Abu Bakr said, Allah's Messenger said, our property is not inherited. So there was a bit of a dispute here between Abu Bakr and the Prophet's daughter. So Abu Bakr is saying that, look, the Prophet's, according to him, or the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, informed him that the Prophets do not leave any property, and whatever we leave is charity, whatever we leave is sadaqah. But the family can eat of this property. By Allah, I will not make any change in the state of sadaqah of Allah's Messenger, and I will leave it as it was during the lifetime of Allah's Messenger, and I will dispose of it as Allah's Messenger used to do. So Abu Bakr refused to give anything of that to Fatima, meaning the land of Fadak. Okay, so she became angry with Abu Bakr and kept away from him, and did not task to him till she died. She remained alive for 6 months after the death of the Prophet. When she died, her husband Ali buried her at night without informing Abu Bakr, and he said the funeral prayers by himself. When Fatima was alive, the people used to respect Ali much, but after the death, Ali noticed a change in the people's attitudes towards him. So Ali sought reconciliation with Abu Bakr and gave him an oath of allegiance, and Ali had not given the oath of allegiance during those months, meaning during those 6 months period before Fatima passed away. So this narration continues. It says, Ali sent someone to Abu Bakr saying, come to us, but let nobody come with you, as he disliked that Umar should come. Umar said to Abu Bakr, no, by Allah, you should not enter upon them alone. Because Abu Bakr, basically, Imam Ali alayhi salam, he wanted to meet Abu Bakr regarding this issue of Fadak. And Umar was afraid what could possibly happen to Abu Bakr had he entered alone with him. Abu Bakr said, what do you think they will do to me? By Allah, I will go to them. So Abu Bakr entered upon them, and then Ali uttered. So then the narration continues. So as we can see from this tradition, from history, there was a dispute that took place amongst the companions of the Prophet, and there was an issue when it comes to the issue of leadership, and there were circumstances surrounding how Imam Ali alayhi salam gave his pledge of allegiance, and as we can see, it was essentially to prevent the Muslims from being further divided. So again, we Shias are those who associate themselves to the Ahlul Bayt, who we believe who are oppressed by certain individuals throughout history, who are now considered to be role models for other Muslims.
Good, excellent. Thank you very much, Sayyid. Should we go on to the next question? The next question is it's an unusual one, but unfortunately, it's quite a typical one that comes across, and it's obviously based on typical, the absurdities that come to people's minds based on sort of anti-Shia propaganda. Do Shias believe that the Wahi revelation was sent to Amir al-Mu'mineen, to the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family by mistake, and it should have gone to Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam? Sayyid Ali, do you want to touch on that first?
I'll let Daniel go ahead. I think I've spoken enough there.
Okay, Daniel.
All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Well, yeah, that's exactly what Brother Hassan said. That is a pretty common one. Maybe to quickly introduce myself, I was actually a Sunni, obviously a convert from Germany, as people might recognize from my accent. So maybe excuse my English if it's not always very good. Yeah, and ever since I was a Sunni, and even a Wahhabi for a while, I have to admit that, it's pretty commonly used. So, and that's why many people who didn't have a lot of experience with Shia Muslims, they will have really weird and distorted views about the Shia. So every time they hear the word Shia and Rafida, and they will be triggered, and they will think of a sect which is pretty close to Satanism, really, and they who believe the weirdest stuff. And we did really believe that. So if there were any Shias and we knew they were, this was like, oh, these are creepy people. They believe weird stuff, and their books are full of shirk and kufr and all that. And we did believe, for example, that stuff like the second question, do believe Shia that the revelation was mistakenly given to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam instead of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, and that we consider Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam a prophet or even higher than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We were taught that this is in the books of the Shia. And maybe we should start with that to make that pretty clear, that it's nowhere in the books of the Shia. So, and no Salafi, no Wahhabi would ever in 2,000 years be able to give a reference for that. And people keep coming with that stuff. We do find references for this kind of belief in books like Talbis Iblis from Ibn Jawzi, and from did a little research. I forgot the books. Ibn Arabi, not the Sufi Ibn Arabi, but Abu Bakr Ibn Arabi, Andalusian faqih of the Maliki school, I think. He mentioned that, and a few others. Actually, there was a sect of the Shia. It was a Ghulat sect, the Ghurabiyya, and the Ghurabiyya, they extincted pretty quickly. I think they didn't even last for 100 years. And their name comes from the Arabic word for raven or crow. And that's because they believed that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, they looked so similar, like two crows look similar. So they were called, or maybe called themselves, the Ghurabiyya. And they actually believe that. They believe Jibril alayhi salam made a mistake. So I mean, that's the point where it starts. We believe the angels are ma'soom. The angels alayhi salam don't make any mistakes. It's impossible for an angel to make any mistake. And in Revelation, so I mean, this is a totally nonsense. So, and they believe that Jibril alayhi salam made a mistake. He thought Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and the revelation was for Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty weird story, obviously, and yeah, I think there's not pretty much to say about that. Like, this is everything we can do to clear up this misconcept. And if there is still anybody out there who is eager to believe that we, the Imam Shia, the 12 Shia, hold that kind of belief, I will make an offer that I will give $2 million to anybody who is able to bring me that narration from any of our books.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Yeah. Very confident claim there.
Yeah.
Also, another point there.
Are you sure? Are you sure about that 2 million? Because I'm searching for it now, bro. I'm searching.
Yeah, but no, I hope the people don't come up with like stuff like Kitab Hafta Sharif or stuff like that.
Exactly. No, but also, there's a point here as well, brother. I mean, let's assume for argument's sake that Jibril made this mistake, okay? Just for argument's sake. So why couldn't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just correct it straight away? Why would he just let the situation just continue? Oh, the wrong man has been appointed. Oh, well, just let history continue as it is. What logic is that? I mean, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all powerful. He could, if this error has been made by for argument's sake, fallible angel, so surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will just intervene and ensure that the man that he wants is the Prophet.
Sorry, Sayyid, just a quick point.
Yeah.
I think it might be worth mentioning the satanic verses here.
Go on then.
Can you give us a background on what happened in the satanic verses?
Well, the satanic verses, it relates to it's an incident. It's quite shocking, but it does exist in the works of the Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Basically, the background is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was delivering wahi, and Satan appeared, sent some revelation to him, which was his verses, and it was about praising the idols, Meccan idols, and Rasulullah actually delivered those verses, which is hence from whence you get Salman Rushdie wrote the satanic verses. That title was based on that narrative. I know it exists in Tariq Tabri and other books of Ahl-Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Yeah. I think there's a specific verse that touches on it.
There is. Can I quickly show you?
And actually, Bukhari actually touches on it slightly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe one. Before you do, maybe I can add some funny stuff, because isn't it that Satan was afraid of Umar? So how can it be that Satan can approach Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and just give some wrong wahi to him?
What? That is a very good point. I like that point.
That's a very good point.
That is a very
good point. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. I like that. Point. That is a very good point. Even though, sorry, Hassan Bahari, just want to point out, yes, we could say some scholars did reject this. They did reject the Prophet received. They reject the idea that the Prophet received satanic verses. But having said that, others didn't, and others, when it comes to the tafsir of this particular ayah, they talked about this. They talked about this particular incident. In fact, Bukhari, as you mentioned, Bukhari does mention it. I can show it to you right now. And just give me a second. And this is from Bukhari, and the chapter is called "The Prostration of Muslims Along with the Mushrikun." And a mushrik is najasun, impure, and does not perform ablution. That's the chapter. And this is taken from Sahih Bukhari, Volume 2, Book 19, Hadith 177. And it says, narrated Ibn Abbas, the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, I prostrated while reciting Surah Najm, and with him prostrated the Muslims, the pagans, the jinns, and all the human beings. But yeah, in terms of the satanic revelation, if we're going to start accusing people of believing that revelation falsely came to anyone,
Yeah,
you're going to end up in a bit of a problem.
well,
because
the question is, if there's any argument, saying that, oh, well, it doesn't mean anything, that narration in Sahih Bukhari, why on earth would pagans be prostrating to something Rasulullah said? Because at the end of the day, they viewed him a false prophet. But they must have been impressed by some verse that resulted in them, sort of prostrating. Something was it?
I mean, again,
the fact of the matter is there is something there, isn't there?
Yeah, well, Ibn Hajar Asqalani mentions it himself. He says that he talks about the report reaching through various chains, and he says there might be some basis to it. And as I said before, famous commentators of the Quran, they too also spoke about this incident. But I don't want to go into too much detail. The point being is, if we're going to start talking about people receiving revelation by mistake, then, like, I'm not trying to be funny, but there's people out there who believe the prophet was inspired by Satan.
Well, also there's also narrations about the prophet forgetting certain verses of the Quran.
Yeah, I think that's a topic for another time.
Yeah.
But say, please do carry on.
Sorry, guys, can I just interject on
Sure,
this point?
Bro, go ahead.
One thing that we all need to start doing as Muslims, or people who identify as Muslim, right? We need to cut the crap, especially when it comes to this propaganda, and just that's based on absolute nothing. And we put it onto other groups. It happens especially to the Shia, right? This report that Imam Ali alayhi salam was supposed to be the receiver of divine revelation, etc., isn't based on our authentic Ithnashi works. Right? It's based on Gulat claims from centuries ago, and I think it's quite hypocritical of many other Muslim groups who will, be the first to preach that the Shia are the ones that try to work off, weak reports or dubious claims and etc. to build an Aqidah. Yeah, they're doing the same thing to slander us.
Yeah.
Same thing that non-Muslims do, Islamophobes do, to attack Muslims, they're doing to other Muslims. You know what I mean? I think it's such an absurd and vile thing to do, because it's done a lot of the time as for political gain. It's also done just out of pure hatred, and this has cost the lives of many Shia around the world. I'm getting worked up. Such nonsensical claims. Yeah. And all someone has to do is pick up a book and start reading it.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
But with these other groups, they don't like people being educated. They like people being stupid, so they can keep feeding off this ignorance. Yeah. And it's absolutely. It's truly sad when you
hit the nail on the head. You hit the nail on the head. Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Inshallah, that's the whole purpose of the channel, really, isn't it? To try and raise that awareness.
The thing is with
Yeah, please.
Carry on, Ryan.
The thing is, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi was given the Quran, it was for all of mankind and jinn, right? And the Muslim community is supposed to be the beacons of humanity for everyone to look at. Yet, when we do such stupid, vile stuff like this to each other, right? Now, there's stigmatic crap that goes along within the Shia, because they don't, like the layman, they might not know certain things about other groups, fair enough. But when it comes to other groups where they actually go about and kill people based on these stupid, baseless claims, it needs to be wiped out immediately. And the groups who have these idiots within them, they need to start doing something about it. You can't just sit there, listen to someone talk absolute nonsense and let it keep going, because you get innocent people being killed. Now they can say something like, oh, well, the Shia killed, us over here, or, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. Most of that crap is all political. If any of this crap is happening, right? You have Shia and Sunni fighting in parts of the Middle East and et cetera. This is predominantly political crap. This isn't based on naql. This isn't based on scripture. But you have people being killed in the streets of various countries for being Shia based on what some idiot has been told by another idiot, right? Or even worse, someone who's not an idiot, who's just evil, and then just wants to have innocent people killed. Sure. Yeah. It's absolute disgusting I can't go any further. I'll let you
Daniel,
go. Carry
I'll
on
let
with the
you
next
go.
question.
Daniel, I'll let you go, bro.
Oh,
Carry
sorry.
on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Daniel wants to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally confirm that, like a little story that, I mean, it's one thing if you have, like Brother Ryan said, the idiots and the common people believe in that kind of stuff. And I can tell you that in German book groups on social media, there's hardly a week where there isn't somebody showing up and saying like, why do you worship the imams? Why do you say Imam Ali alayhi salam was a prophet and all that stuff? That's one thing. Okay, these are ignorant teenagers. All right, maybe they're fresh out of their jahiliyyah. That's one thing, but they're preachers. There's a famous Salafi preacher in Germany. He's a really big number. He's even called Sheikh by his followers, and he even called people to go to Syria and to fight there. And this guy is supposed to be a sheikh, a scholar, and he didn't only mention the point about the Ghurabi that he said the reason he has a video on YouTube why you cannot pray behind Shia, because they believe that the Shia believe that the revelation was given mistakenly to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They believe that when we do 3 takbir after salah, then this is 3, one curse for Abu Bakr, one curse for Omar, one curse for Uthman, and they worship stones and weird stuff like that where there's no evidence ever, and you hear them little teenagers sitting there, they say Allahu Akbar, oh curse these Rafida, and they're eager to go to Syria, kill people. They see the next Alawi who doesn't even have to do anything with us, and they will kill him and his whole family for believing that kind of stuff. And that's a dangerous thing.
What?
And
It's true. Ryan, go ahead, bro.
I
and
got
I
one more
think,
point too. Yeah, sorry, Daniel. Go.
and
Sorry,
I think
sorry.
I thought about maybe really starting petitions to make this illegal, like really make this Wahhabi teaching illegal, because it's actually calling people to terrorism. It's calling people to kill people.
It essentially, it doesn't, the ideology doesn't allow you to coexist with anyone else. Do you understand? And they have that concept where they have these traditions in their books which talks up about pretty much spreading Islam by the sword, and this is the type of mentality that they have. And yes, they do incite hatred against Shias, and they use different methods to do that. So they try to act on people's emotions, and they spew their poison with the rhetoric that they speak. And what can you say? I mean, Hassan Bahari, did you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I think Brother Daniel was, really hit the nail on the head on that point. I mean, I've had that similar experience. I was working in Shepherd's Bush Advice Centre 18 years ago, and the one occasion there was a mosque near me. And in those days, to be honest, I wasn't in that sort of zone. I just assumed it doesn't matter which mosque you go to, you won't have any problems. I never hadn't experienced any issues. The very first time that I went there, I prayed my own Zohr, and there was Salafi. I didn't realize at the time it was a Salafi mosque, just giving me dirty looks. And he looked like a revert brother. All of a sudden, as soon as I finished, he goes, "What did you just do?" And I said, he goes, "What was all that about? Who was you cursing?" I said, "Cursing?" I said, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. He goes, "No, you was cursing Abu Bakr, Umar, and Usman." Now, where on earth does this come from? This sort of stupidity. But then again, I've heard another, Ali Tamimi. He was quite big on this sort of circuit of the Salafis in the toward the end, in the 90s, and Alhamdulillah, he's now serving a long life sentence in an American jail for terrorism-related offences. And he was the same, and except he had a different take on it. He goes, when Shias do this, they're praising Satan. That was in one of his speeches. And I actually heard that cassette. It was cassettes in those days, that far back. It was actually in the London School of Economics prayer room. I remember taking it back and listening to it. But you understand, this is the type of hatred and mentality that we are, inshallah, through this channel, trying to raise, we're trying to raise an awareness.
Right, did you want to say something?
Things. Yep.
Yeah, sorry there. So interesting little story. I've got another anecdote. I was at a wedding last year, and it was a non-Muslim wedding. It was a friend of mine from when I was younger, and I attended by myself. And when I rocked, this is from some Christians, and beautiful family. I love them to bits. And when I got to the table to sit at, they put me with the other Muslims they invited to the wedding, because there's some communicate and some common ground, etc. This the father was a Muslim. His son, I don't believe, was a practicing Muslim, but it doesn't matter. The father was identified as a Hanafi, and he was from Singapore. And we started talking. It was all very good, and etc. etc. And I told him that I was a Shia, and he was like, I don't get that. What? And I'm like, what do you mean? What don't you get? He's like, well, I don't know why everyone just can't follow the right school, which is like the Hanafi school. I mean, even this is a Sunni, yeah. And I talking to him more. I'm like, okay, and he's like, I just don't also understand how the Shia, you guys have 13 prophets after Muhammad. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, Khomeini, you have Khomeini. I go, what the? And that dawned at that point. I'd already gone through stuff before becoming a Shia, where I've heard some stupid stuff. And he's not a stupid guy. He just is completely ignorant of this concept. He was from Southeast Asia, and in places like Malaysia, where I believe preaching to Shayu is completely illegal, right? Mm-hmm. This is where ignorance breeds. Mm-hmm. So we're very, alhamdulillah, we're very lucky that in the West, we have the freedom of religion where we can all discuss this, and we're all living in the West at the moment. We can talk about it, and you guys have Hyde Park in the UK. You guys can go out and actually make discourse and etc., create dialogue. But in places like this, right, where people can't be open about who they are as a Shia or etc., this is where this nonsensical crap comes from. And it's even worse when the establishment, right, stops the refutations from being able to happen. Right, so it just breeds more and more ignorance. It's really sad. This is based on the whole regarding the revelation supposed to be going to Imam Ali.
Ryan, do you know what? I just want to point out something as well, and that is unfortunately, how non-Muslims view Islam because of these individuals as well, and how they brush Muslims all to be, they brush Muslims to all under the same brush because they see that and then they think, right, okay, that is Islam, or that is the interpretation of Islam. But they read these traditions, they see a personality who, to be honest with you, the type of things which are said about this individual, you probably wouldn't even say that about your own enemy.
Yeah.
So.
Should we move on to the next question?
Yep.
Okay, the next question, another quite common one. Do the Shia believe that the imams are superior to prophets?
That's a good one.
Touch
yeah, sure. So on this particular issue, our scholars have discussed this, and there is a difference of opinion. So one position is that we believe that the imams, alayhi salam, in rank and in status, they excel all prophets, the major prophets of Bani Israel, with the exception of the last and final messenger, who's obviously not included in Bani Israel, which is Prophet Muhammad, may peace and blessings be upon him. So that's one position. So greater than all the prophets, with the exception of the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him. The other position is they believe that they are only higher than all the prophets, with the exception of Isa alayhi salam, Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. I'm not sure if I mentioned him.
So the prophets that brought books, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the second opinion.
Okay.
And the third opinion is basically they're not. But again, this is not really a major issue for us because, you can still be a Shia and not have that belief, right? Do you know what I mean? It's not something which, okay, I believe that the imams are less than the prophets. That's, I'm no longer going to be a Shia. No, you don't have to be a Shia to believe that the imams alayhi salam are higher in rank than these prophets, with the exception of Prophet Muhammad. I mean, obviously, we can go into a philosophical argument. What makes people prophets? What excels some prophets from other prophets? How do we define prophets? Are they always males? There's even a difference of opinion of whether Mary was a prophet or not. So, we need that's a whole separate debate itself. I don't know if any of the brothers want to elaborate on anything else.
Can I just touch on? I mean, give one example. I mean, every prophet, we know that they had a different level of knowledge. This is accepted, isn't it? I mean, they had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equipped them in a different way. If you look at the example, for example, if when you go to kindergarten, the sort of teachings that you're given at the early stage of your life, it's like a memory by rote. You're just given names and you memorize them. You don't understand what specific things are. You're just told to memorize them. That's the first stage. You get to the next stage and the next stage, and as you get into higher classes, you develop your knowledge greater. Now, if you look at the example of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, he didn't get a massive amount of a large kind of duty of what he needed to do. In fact, if we look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is simply giving him names to memorize. That was his, isn't it? If you look at the Quranic example, there's not any concept of him going out doing dawah. It's simply memorize these names. He was given specific names to memorize. So that's just like the kindergarten example, where you memorize something by rote. That's it. There's nothing further. Then obviously when we go to other prophets, we see that their knowledge base is increased. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala equips them with more knowledge. Now, when we get to the seal of all prophets, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, due to him being the messenger over all, okay, all peoples, we see the level of knowledge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him. There's many hadiths on that. There's obviously Quranic ayats on that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed him with knowledge, blessed him with wisdom. So obviously, let's be very clear about this. Is the knowledge of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam a prophet? Is it equal in rank to the knowledge of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, to the seal of all prophets? Of course not.
No.
The knowledge that he had is much greater.
Just to add to that, the fact is we believe that the imams alayhi salam are the inheritors of the prophets.
Precisely, that's why I was going to link it to, essentially. Now, if the prophet, peace be upon him, and his family is superior in knowledge to Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, clearly he is. Logically, we believe the imams also are superior in knowledge. This is just one perspective, because they are the inheritors of the knowledge of the prophet. See what I'm saying? So if we believe that, I don't see anything objectionable there.
Don't you find it, the irony is that even though the imams alayhi salam explicitly, and there's a tradition at Al-Ghafi when somebody said, are we allowed to call you prophets? And the imams alayhi salam totally forbid it. They said, no, we're not prophets at all. So they totally forbid that. The irony is that the same people, they have these traditions which talk about certain individuals being prophets, like the famous hadith, had there been a prophet after me, it would be Umar. Yeah. So, essentially what we're looking at is, even though we believe the prophet is the last and final messenger, I'm sure they do as well, an individual like Umar could have been a prophet. Based on what exactly? Based on what? Again, we have to go into a whole different, debate in terms of what is prophets and how does one become a prophet and the ranks of prophets, etc., etc.
Well, I don't know if the brothers.
Well, Bin Baz, yeah.
Well.
Bin Baz. What
he
did Bin
mentioned
Baz
Ibn Taymiyyah, didn't he?
Yeah. He said Bin Baz actually mentioned this in one of his books. He said that it was asked him, was Ibn Taymiyyah a prophet? And he said there is indication to it. So yeah, I mean, people might think it's a joke, but by all means, I'll be happy to share the references around there.
Well, the funny thing is, if you look at, one of their major scholars in the Indian subcontinent, Shah Ismail Shahid, who wrote Taqwiyat al-Imam, which is like a Farsi version of Kitab al-Tawheed of Ibn Wahhab's. So it's got the usual terminology of shirk and bid'ah. He mentions that you can refer to prophets as your big brothers because it's no objection. So essentially for him, it's not, he didn't even see it as an issue because they're nothing more than our big brothers. So if there is really no importance where a prophet is nothing more than your big brother, what's the issue? Why are you having such an objection on this if we make these comments about our imams? Brother Daniel, do you want to add anything?
Well, when I started to get more interested in Shiism, I had also this argument on my list, and actually I first had some issues with that because I said, okay, maybe I was kind of afraid, do Shias really believe that, and maybe that's not the thing I can do. But then I saw, okay, where is the problem actually? Because we see there is a Nabi, which is someone who receives certain kind of inspiration to guide his people. Then we have a Rasul who is given a certain message. And then we have an Imam who is certain kind of guide, authority for people. And these are three different things. So, and we don't have any indication that there is any hierarchy to that, and we don't have any indication that it would be some kind of kufr or haram to actually believe that. I don't say that we believe that or that every Shia believe that, but even if we would believe that an imam is higher in rank than a Nabi or an Rasul, then please somebody show me anything that says this is kufr or this is haram or it's not allowed to believe that. I didn't come across anything like that. And when I first realized, okay, this is an objection that is just out of the air. It isn't a problem at all. You can believe that. You could even believe that according to Sunni standards, because there is no hadith, no ayah which says you have to believe that the Rasul is the highest in creation. Actually, there are hadith which say the a human being is higher than the angels, we are higher than the jinn, and the messengers are the best of human beings. Yes, but
Bro, Daniel, you made a very interesting point there. Actually, you just
yeah.
reminded me of a hadith which is actually mentioned in Bukhari, where it says the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam considered anybody who claims he's higher than other prophets to be a liar.
Was it specific
Exactly,
prophet?
exactly.
Prophet Yunus, isn't it?
Yeah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is downgrading his status time after
Yeah.
time in Bukhari. He's saying he's less than Musa, he is less than Ibrahim, less than Yunus, alayhimus salam. True, yeah.
So yeah, Ryan, do you want to add anything to that before Hassan takes over?
Yeah, thank you. So I think it's great the point that was brought up regarding how Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was sent to all mankind and jinn, right? So his capacity for leadership and knowledge and ability to reveal to the people what was revealed to him had to be much higher than the previous prophets and the Rasuls, because they were sent to smaller groups. Nabi Isa alayhi salam is considered al-Masih to both the Muslims and the Christians, right? But even he, as the Messiah, is of lesser rank to Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these roles or titles aren't necessarily built on a certain hierarchy as per se. So the way I perceive it is how many people they were sent to and how complex and difficult it would be to guide that vast demographic. You know what I mean? Nabi Isa alayhi salam, when he was first sent, he was sent to Bani Israel, you know, and the Jews. You know what I mean? To conclude what was sent of the Torah, right? Yeah. And the Torah, and with the Injil. You know what I mean? And these are the kitabs that were sent for these people. And we, you know, they asked, we still have to believe in these books and et cetera, but even as the Messiah, as I just said, he's still not better than Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So obviously, of course, anyone who succeeds Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has to keep it consistent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is of all things consistent. You know what I mean? He has been consistent since Nabi Adam to now. You know what I mean? So it wouldn't make any sense if we're going to use our aql, you know, and try to rationalize this. It wouldn't make sense for Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to come, right? And then for the divine, the leadership or the guidance of humanity to be just completely dropped and left for people. This is what doesn't make any sense to me about other sects. You know what I mean? There is no consistency there. What happened in 632? Historically, what gave humanity the ability to govern by themselves? But because we had the Quran, we can't even agree on what the meanings of the Quran are, the interpretation of it. You can't. It doesn't make any sense. So it makes perfect rational sense that when we're looking at the hierarchy of all these different roles and etc., the most important thing is how practical it is, right? And that's why we have so many narrations and traditions from Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as those who we believe came after him, right? And it's an abundance of things. And Islam, you have to remember too, is a holistic ideology, right? Yeah. So it covers everything. The Christians don't have answers for the such minute things that go on in our day-to-day lives. You know what I mean? The Jews don't have answers for the very minute thing that goes on in our everyday lives. But this capacity for knowledge and teaching was bestowed onto the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then passed on through his successors. May peace and blessings be upon them all. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. I think you guys wrapped it up pretty good.
Thank you, Ryan. I think you just touched on something just for a second, and I think it's quite relevant to say that as we're discussing this. I mean, one of the objections which comes obviously is this whole the Shias have got this doctrine of imamate and it's unacceptable. Let's be honest. What is so unacceptable about it? What is it that you guys find so objectionable that we're having these sort of regular sort of nonsense being spewed about us, saying, look, look what you believe. Ultimately, what do we believe? We believe that something as important as leadership, succession to the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his Prophet would not leave it vague. He would something is as crucial as leadership after him, he would ensure that the person that exceeded him was appointed by him, to step into his shoes. Now, what is the problem if we have that belief, number one? And number two, we believe that the person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses is the best person for that position. So we believe that imamate is divinely appointed, and the person that is appointed is the most ideal candidate because of his superiority. What's the objection? You know what I mean? For me, it just is so logical. I'm a lawyer, okay, and I'm not saying this just to sort of show off who I am. No, I'll give you an example. If I'm going for a job interview, okay, say for a senior lawyer position, there's going to be certain criteria, isn't there? One, I must have a law degree. Common sense, isn't it? I must have practiced for a certain time. I must have knowledge in that field. How on earth can I, for example, suddenly, without having any experience as a lawyer, suddenly become the head honcho, say the head of department? For no reason. I just come in one day, I'll get the key, I'll walk in, sit in the seat and say, that's it, I'm in charge. That doesn't make any logical sense. If you look at the history of prophets, every prophet left a successor. Okay, and even if you look apart from the Prophet himself, okay, let's just say, for example, every successor of the Prophet left a successor and some system of succession. Are we really going to believe that the seal of all prophets was totally silent on something as important as succession? And I think, brothers, you two brothers which have come to Shia Islam, I'm sure you can kind of back me up on this. What's so illogical about what we say?
Sorry, Sayyid, I just want to point out one more thing here, that when it comes to the issue of leadership, yes, the Shia position is we believe that the imams to be appointed, divinely appointed by God. They, on the other hand, do still have a concept of leadership because
of course they do.
Many verses of the Quran and the Hadith have pointed to the necessity of pledging allegiance to a leader. And the reason for that is to prevent the Muslims from being divided. So there's a necessity of having a leadership there, okay? And this is the reason why today we Muslims are split into so many different factions as well, because we lack leadership and there's no unity amongst Muslims. So again, it goes back to the point. If the Prophet himself stated the necessity in their works to have a leader, how could it be that he left it for his ummah to decide? And even then, there's no clear way to appoint a leader because a leader can essentially be pointed through many ways. And a leader himself, what qualifies a person to be a leader? Is it his knowledge? Is it his bravery? Is it his asceticism? And again, if we go point to those virtues, then we can comfortably say that nobody excelled Imam Ali alayhi salam in terms of virtue than any other Sahaba. Do you understand? So, but yeah, Sayyid, I think we need to carry on because otherwise we'll probably be here all day. I don't know if you brothers want to add anything.
Just one sentence, because if we take it back to rank, then I would like to point to the fact that Sunni and Shia both agree that Isa alayhi salam, when he will return, will pray behind Imam Mahdi ajal farajahu. So just leave it for that a prophet will pray behind an imam. So I'll leave it open to the viewers to decide if this isn't problematic for the Sunnis if they attack us for putting the imams in rank over the prophets, because they will argue that Abu Bakr was the highest in rank for leading Salah. So then Imam Mahdi Ajul Faraju must be higher in rank than Isa alayhi salam. So
but to be fair, when it comes to the topic of leading Salah for them, that's a whole big topic itself.
Yeah.
Because the individuals who can lead salah for them can be some interesting personalities. But again, I think we can go into that another time. So, Ryan, did you want to say anything?
No, look, I'll probably just rant on about this for ages. I think this kind of goes into, in my opinion, goes into the topic of isma and imama. So I think we've already got some pre-recorded stuff on this. So when that comes out, inshallah ta'ala, so we can all deal with that then. But yeah, it's a very important topic. But from a rational perspective, it makes complete sense. Where the only place that they can try to get us on is, what is it based on scripture? That's fair enough. That's for the pre-recorded content. We will deal with that later. But rationally, if we're talking about an infallible God, right, that throughout history has sent people to guide us and etc., it wouldn't make any sense that he would just stop. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. So yeah. Anyway, yeah.
And the thing is that it makes the ummah more the ummah of the Prophet, peace be upon him, more clever than him, because they deemed it so important. They deemed it more important than attending his funeral. If they saw it so important, why didn't he? Those sort of things. Just you think to yourself, everyone seems to have more intelligence on this issue. It's important. We have a leader. Don't forget, there was an era. I mean, I don't want to rant on and go off tangent, but if you look at the time when the Prophet died, obviously there was already the threat of the Byzantine Empire. They were watching the situation. How on earth could any leader just simply pass away and not bother having a successor when he knows all the threats? We know there's verses of the Quran that there's hypocrites in Medina. There's obviously the threat of the Byzantine Empire. All sorts of issues are there, and he simply just says, "Okay, I won't bother." I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
I've got one more point. Sorry, I think Said Ali. I think maybe I misheard you, but you said that the ummah lacks leadership, right? Maybe I misheard you on that. But at the end of the day, in my opinion, we don't lack leadership. We lack the agreement on what that leadership is and who it is to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you look at the 12 school, all right, we all agree on who the leader is.
Yes.
We all agree on who that is, and our madhab is far more unified in regards to belief compared to this huge umbrella term of Sunni. You know what I mean? So we know who our leader is.
Who can't even agree on what Tawheed is?
Should we go on to the next question, brothers?
Yes, bro. Please go ahead.
Okay. So, my battery's going low, so I'm going to disappear and get another plug in a second. But I'll just throw the next question up. This is obviously a very, very common, and it's quite an emotional one. So it does create quite a bit of anger. Why do the Shia curse the companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family? And why do they believe that most of them apostated after the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family passed away? Say that I'm going to throw it to you first, and then the other brothers can also contribute. Then I'm going to also add a few points. Say that. Can you hear me?
Unmute my mic. You can probably hear me now.
Yeah.
So why do Shias curse the Sahaba? Well, this is the interesting thing, because obviously if you go according to their principles, anybody who insults the Sahaba is considered to be a disbeliever, a liar, a dajjal. So obviously there's repercussions for cursing the Sahaba. And when we say cursing, we need to define what we mean by cursing, because you have lana and then you have sub. Sub meaning you swearing, and lana is more of a supplication where you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remove your mercy from someone. So you have lana and then you have sub. Now, this question, the reason why it's to really go into detail into it, you'd need to spend obviously time. You'd need to look at the books, etc., etc. But okay, let's just say hypothetically speaking, right, that it's disbelief to curse the Sahaba, and it's kufr, and whoever does this is misguided and is astray, etc., etc. The irony is, according to Islamic history, you had people who were the Khawarij, and you had people who were Nasbis. Nasbis were those individuals who kept hatred towards Imam Ali alayhi salam and his Ahlul Bayt in their heart. and they were referred to as nawasib, or they were called nasbis. Nasbis emerged during the time of, I could say probably the time of Muawiyah historically, and many of them aligned themselves with Muawiyah as well. Many of the Nawasib supported Muawiyah. The Khawarij, obviously, we know they came during the time of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon them, but they showed their true face during the rule of Imam Ali alayhi salam. So essentially, we got two groups of people: the Khawarij, Nawasib, both staunch enemies of Imam Ali alayhi salam. But what's interesting is, if you go according to the books of our brothers, you'd find that the Khawarij and the Nawasib were amongst their prolific narrators of hadith. Now, if you have these individuals who, according to your principles, anyone who curses and considers the Sahaba to be disbelievers, why are you taking religion for them? Why are you trusting these individuals? Why are you trusting the Khawarij, who they were the same people who criticized the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, when he was distributing booties of war? So they're liars, okay? And they're amongst the munafiqeen, and there's a hadith of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, that says that the Khawarij, they will pass Islam like how an arrow passes through a bow. So, yes, okay, if it's disbelief, then why are you taking your religion from these people who, by your principles, would be considered to be disbelievers? And again, okay, let's go back a little bit further. What about the Sahaba? There's occasions where the Sahaba, for example, Muawiyah, was known for ordering the cursing of Imam Ali alayhi salam from the pulpits, and it wasn't till the time of Umar Abdul Aziz where he stopped it. Some may argue, oh well, the cursing of Imam Ali alayhi salam with Muawiyah had nothing to do with religion, it was political. Fine.
Yeah, I've heard this one.
If you say it's political, then why do you have a problem with Shias who do it, who maybe curse individuals who you disagree upon?
Yeah, no.
You see that?
I've heard,
you see the inconsistency. So again,
yeah.
I think what's important
No,
is
the argument. No, the argument is, oh well, it wasn't from a religious perspective. The question they've even said, the example that I'd heard in one of the videos was, oh, so what? Marwan used to curse Imam Ali. So what? I mean, fighting Imam Ali's worse, and Muawiyah fought him, but this cursing business by the Umayyads, it was just political. It didn't have any sort of significance. Even though we've got the hadith of Rasulullah, whoever curses Ali curses me, and whoever curses me curses Allah. But they have now sort of twisted that and offered us there's a new sect emerging, and I'm not going to mention the name of that sect, but they seem to have this kind of capability to you've got established hadiths which the ulama have long agreed by Al Sunnah, through even those which were quite rigid, like quite anti-shia. Those sort of hadiths, which have stood the test of time, they're being weakened now. All of a sudden, if there's anything on Fazail Ali, that hadith is weak. Ali's with the truth is with Ali. Something that's traditionally been, for example, quoted by Al Sunnah and their texts, accepted. Suddenly,
sorry, Sayyid, can I just add to that point? Sorry, you said that tradition about Ali's with the truth and truth is with Ali.
Yeah.
You hold on, but you people believe in the Adalah of the Sahaba. You believe all the companions are just and truthful.
Yeah, should be an issue with it.
So you shouldn't have an issue with that tradition anyway. I don't know why you have a problem with that. So yeah,
exactly.
I mean, going back to the point, if we're going to say that to curse the Sahaba is disbelief, then you can end up in a problem, because there's examples, there's a plethora of traditions within Bukhari and Muslim alone where Sahaba have disputes, and they've considered each other to be liars, dishonest, sinful, treacherous. Yeah. So, and that's one example. You got examples where wives of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon them, disputed, and they used harsh words against each other. You have there's a hadith in Bukhari which mentions that there was an individual, a companion of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, who was called a donkey. He was called a donkey. They used to joke about him. He used to make Allah and His Messenger laugh a lot, but they used to call him Khamar, a donkey. So again, yes, okay. Do Shias consider majority of them to have deviated? Yes, we believe that majority during the time of the Prophet turned back upon their heels, but later those group of individuals aligned themselves with Imam Ali And this is why you find traditions in our book, for example, in Najr al-Balagha, in the book Al-Khisal, where the Ahlul Bayt praised a group of companions. And I think there's a chapter in Al-Khisal under the number 12,000, which mentions the praise of 12,000 companions of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him. So again, we don't oppose all the Sahaba. This is a lie. This is a misconception. And I don't know if any of the brothers want to add anything else to that.
Can I just add 2 points here? I think number one, Sahih Muslim itself has a chapter, those that the Prophet cursed.
Oh, can I bring it up?
Sorry,
can I bring it up, Sayyid? Sorry,
yeah, go on. If you bring it up, and then I'll leave it to you to kind of, because obviously if the objection is, you guys, you believe in this concept of cursing, well, brother, if you bring it up, Sayyid Ali, and then maybe you can show our viewers, brothers and sisters that are up very late, it'd be good just to sort of, so that they understand, okay, so if you've got an objection with this concept of cursing,
the Prophet, it's a sunnah of the Prophet, apparently.
Exactly. So it shouldn't really be a problem.
Sorry, Sayyid, I apologize. I don't have the tradition with me.
It's in Sahih Muslim.
It's in Sahih Muslim. It's I believe the chapter is called those whom the Prophet insulted, cursed,
but didn't deserve it. There's a
it even says the word swear as well. It says those who the Prophet cursed and swear, who he insulted, swore at.
Yeah, but didn't deserve it.
But didn't deserve it. Yeah, but
exactly.
He just randomly went around cursing people who didn't deserve it.
And interestingly, the first hadith says that they've recorded there. He goes, "I'm just an ordinary man. If I curse anybody, it's a blessing for them."
Yeah,
so it starts. You know, like you get a film that sets the scene. So this hadith sets the scene of that chapter, and then the next narration relates to Muawiyah, where the Prophet is calling Muawiyah. He goes, "Where's Muawiyah gone? He's eating. Where's he gone? He's eating." And then the Prophet, peace be upon him and his family, curses his belly, isn't it? As you said, can you actually bring that up? I mean, I'm sure if you do a search,
so give me a second.
Belly or something.
Yeah, give me a moment. Let me see if I can bring it up.
It's just we're saying that if you've got an objection with the concept of cursing, then it's the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah.
And if he curses someone and it's a blessing, then what's the problem?
Yeah.
But if you could bring that up, say it'd be quite interesting.
Yeah, I'll let the brothers add to that very quickly.
Brothers, can you add to it while saying that he looked it up?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, Allah is cursing, and the second thing is, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is cursing, and also Sahaba cursed each other. I spontaneously found that in my collection, for example, that Khalid ibn Walid cursed Abdurrahman ibn Auf, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Don't curse my companion." So he didn't even consider
him as a companion.
Companion. Actually, that's another issue. Maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. And also, Brother Ryan, you want to add something?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. So when it comes down to this topic as well, it's again another. It's just like the Shia, what the word Shia means topic. When we talk about Sahaba from the mainstream schools of thought of Islam, the Islamic community, the Sunni schools, when they hear Sahaba, they immediately have this weird veneration of that concept. You know what I mean? They automatically, it's like it's a good thing to be a Sahaba of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, etc., etc. So, but the weird thing about it, the Quran itself states that, I believe it was Nabi Yusuf, alayhi salam, and he had companions that were kafir, right? Yeah. So the word itself, it's neutral. It doesn't have, it doesn't make any sense. So from the Quranic perspective, and a prophet can have companions that are both believers and disbelievers, etc. Also, in regards to when it comes to this whole cursing topic, it's the Sahaba and also the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that get brought up, right? And why the Shia have a disdain for some of them, right? We already look at Nabi Noah alayhi salam and Nabi Lut alayhi salam's their wives. You know, the Quran clearly states what their level of Iman was, if any. Right? So when we look at this, we have to try to understand what the word itself means and kind of take this stigma away from it, from both sides, and look at it neutrally. Right? When we talk about when I hear Sunnis, they'll talk about Adala Sahaba, and they'll say, oh, whoever saw the Prophet, whoever died in the state of Iman, etc., right? Now, it's kind of funny, like I'll talk to a Zaidi, right? And they'll also kind of defend this concept, but they, from my experience, they divided the concept of Sahaba into different sections, right? So we believe that there were certain companions that stayed true companions the entire time to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, and then there was those who were companions in the same regard as those who were companions of other prophets that were kafir. I mean, not the prophets that were kafir, but the companions, right? So I think firstly we need to establish what these definitions are, because we're often going into debates and we're just arguing we're arguing things, not even agreeing on what the words mean, which is just pointless. That's why it's 1400 years of just back and forth, and we're not actually getting anywhere, right? So that needs to be established. Then when it comes down to why there's disdain for certain people who are identified as companions and etc. Well, for me personally, it was Sunni books that actually made them look bad. It was Sunni books that's what turned me off in the very beginning. So this is something I don't understand. If Sunnis actually, mashallah, a lot of them are very good at reciting Quran and stuff like this, and beautiful voices, and I adore listening to a lot of their recitations and etc. But when it comes to actually really looking into their schools of thought and really looking into what they believe, right? And you go into the narrations that are attributed to these individuals who we generally have disdain for, right? And the Aqidah that's built from these individuals' teachings, you have to understand that for us it's just absurd. And because it's absurd and it doesn't make any sense, right? We have to reject it. So
so Ryan, it goes back to the point. It's obviously when you go to the Ahl al-Bayt, they give you the pure interpretation of Islam, right? That's what it comes down to. If you're going to take your religion from these Kharijis and these Nasbis who essentially were the enemies of the Prophet and the Ahl al-Bayt, then you're gonna have a version of Islam which is basically a representation of who the Kharijis represented and who the Nawasib represented. So I just want to bring that tradition up for you, Hassan Buhari. I just managed to locate it.
Sayyid, whilst you're there, can you also bring up the tradition of the vast? In Bab al-Fitan, there's traditions about the vast Sahaba being in hell anyway.
Yeah. That's another very interesting tradition. So
because it links to this concept.
Sure.
Why do we be there? Most of them apostated. Well, check your own books.
Sure. So this is from Sunnah.com, and the chapter, if you have a look, whomever is cursed, reviled, or prayed against. But if you see the Arabic, you can see the Arabic. If you read it,
Bob. Okay, yeah.
It says the word sub. You can see the word sub.
Yeah.
So it says those who the Prophet cursed, reviled, and prayed against. And you can read the tradition yourself in your own time. And it says there was it says Aisha reported 2 persons visited Allah's Messenger. So these were people, because what is a companion? A companion, by definition, according to them, is anyone who had seen the Prophet or at least been in his presence. He doesn't necessarily have to physically see him with the eyes because he could be blind, but anyone who's been in the presence of the Prophet. So 2 individuals visited Allah's Messenger, and both of them talked about a thing of which I'm not aware. But that annoyed him, and he invoked curses upon both of them and hurled malediction. And when they went out, I said, Allah's Messenger, the good would reach everyone, but it would not reach these 2. He said, why so? So he doesn't even know why he cursed them. Yeah. I said, because I said, because you've invoked curse and hurled malediction upon both of them. He said, don't you know that I have made a condition with my Lord, saying thus, O Allah, I'm a human being, and that for a Muslim upon whom I invoke a curse or a hurl makes it a source of purity and reward. MashaAllah. So when the Prophet was cursing people who were not worthy of being cursed, it was like they were getting blessed. It was like a dua for them. Yeah. So if this is, if the Prophet's cursing is like this, the Allahu Akbar, can you imagine what his duas are like?
Exactly.
This is from Say Muslim, and that's the chapter, and the narration is available there.
But gets the Muawiyah narration, because obviously that's the one that, you know, that. Can you just quote the next one, Sayyid?
I think Sayyid, what we'll do, we'll do a show. There's a whole, I think we've done like 50 episodes just on Muawiyah alone, to be honest with you.
Exactly.
So that's going to get shown at some point. But, you know, again, you know, as you said, as you mentioned, the narration of Lake Found. There's a famous tradition which talks about the hadith of Lake Found. And well, I could bring up for you anyway, and you could
bring it up. It's just it's relevant because the question was, why do we believe that the vast bulk apostated? Okay, although like you've corrected the position and said that obviously we believe that they, even if they did go astray, they came back. If you look at your own text, and this is your most authentic book of the Quran, it says something totally different.
So it says, narrated Ibn Musayyab, the companions of the Prophet said, some men from my companions will come to my lake fount, and they will be driven away from it. And I will say, O Lord, my companions, it will be said, you have no knowledge of what they innovated after you left. They turned apostates as renegades, reverted from Islam. So it's a very interesting narration. Of course, they will have, you know, the typical responses is that it refers to those groups of people who were around during the time of Abu Bakr's rule, and they'd hate renegades because they're the ones who refused to pay him zakat. But again, this goes into a massive topic. But yes,
I also say there's another narration which says most of them will burn.
Yeah. It
says the vast bulk.
It does. I don't want to go into that now.
No, but I think it's relevant. No, fine. But you see what I'm saying? If the issue is about apostasy, you really need to examine your own books.
Yes, I agree with you. And we know from, you know, one of the prophecies as well towards the end of times as well is that, you know, the decline of Islam, and essentially there was a decline of Islam after the death of the Prophet, and we know this from history. So anyway, say I don't know if the brothers want to add, because we should really move on to the next point. I don't know if
there's anything else you want to add?
No.
Yeah, but I just got 2 points. So firstly, it's funny, in my personal experience, when I've shown other Muslims these hadith from sites like Sunni.com, it's quite funny because it has the Arabic and then the English, and they'll say to me, well, no, the English says this, but the Arabic, you know, if you actually really, you have to understand Arabic. And if you know what they're saying, it doesn't really mean that, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. Well, firstly to that, it's your schools that are translating this. So if it's not translating it properly, then you're just misguiding people. So either you guys all agree upon that and just stick to a translation, so you all just can't be like, oh, well, it's not translated from that's firstly, you need to clear that up, right? And then, secondly, oh no, I forgot my point. Damn it.
Huh?
Too early in the morning for me, guys. I forgot my point.
That's fine. I think
too early in the morning. It's night time for us, guys.
But
no excuses, right?
Was there anything else you wanted to ask the next question, or?
I think Said, you may have touched on it whilst I just went away. There's obviously they've got narrations in their own books. I think Bukhari's got that, isn't it? Killing a Muslim is kufr, and cursing him is fisk. So even if we, you know, it doesn't take you out of Islam. If you do curse the companions, okay, if we accept it, it could be transgression, but it doesn't make you a kafir. Just one other point.
Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. Just a quick point. See, the thing is, have you noticed there's always like an emotional attempt to say, oh my God, they've cursed this person, they've cursed that person. But it's fine. We can curse their people. We can call the Prophet's parents disbelievers because it's written in our books, as in not in our books, but it's written in their books. Yeah. For us, we consider, you know, the Prophet's ancestors to be pure and all believers up all the way to Adam. They, on the other hand, they have a different concept. They don't believe the Prophet's ancestors were all believers. They consider a lot of them to be disbelievers. Even the Prophet's parents.
All of them.
Yeah. So you know, it's okay. You can believe. You know. So the main thing is we need to understand why have we come to this conclusion. Just as if you have drawn this image and picture of the Sahaba, which let's be honest, not everything is hunky-dory in your books in terms of
Exactly.
what happened between them. They were fighting each other. They were killing each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
As you mentioned before, as somebody said, cursing the Sahaba is one thing, but, going against war against the Imam of the time is even worse. So then the question is, then, what is that then? What do you call those people who declared war against the rightful Imam of the time, or the rightful Khalifa of the time, the rightly guided Khalifa of the time? What is the what's the legal ruling of those people? What do you call them Islamically? Do you understand the point?
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Can I just make one other point? Go on, brother Daniel, go on, please.
Yeah, just one thing from my experience is that actually that's one major point where I almost left Islam. Actually, there was a time in my life when I started to get deeper into narrations and Islamic history, and I mean we were indoctrinated with this extremely high rank of Sahaba, and they're absolutely taboo. You cannot touch them. And then you see which kind of people were those Sahaba. Not all of them, obviously, but some they are totally inconsistent with what is taught, and you see some of the Sahaba. I mean, even Hamza Yusuf, famous Sunni preacher, said it in one lecture that we cannot ignore the fact that some of them did horrible stuff, and it's even in their books. So we read it in their books, and we still cannot even criticize them. And I said, no, if these are the best kind of people, and I go to hell if I criticize them, then there's something wrong with this religion. And that gave me big headache for a long time, because we obviously see that practically none of the Sahaba, except Imam Ali alayhi salam, even to Sunni narrations, but none of them does fit the standards set by Quran and Sunnah. None of them. Not even the Prophet. Let's leave that alone. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not even the Prophet is a proper Muslim according to some narrations. He's committing stuff that doesn't really match up with good behavior. Then I ask myself, who in the world is a good role model to follow? Nobody is. Yeah.
Sorry, Ryan. I just want to point out one thing as well. It's funny because if you go according to their books, right, they even have a principle. I think Ghadeer mentions about those who insult the Prophet's ancestors, or those who insult the Prophet's ancestors. He's got a chapter, and he considers anyone who insults or says anything of insult to him or blasphemous to him, they would be considered disbelievers. So according to, Ghadeer's book,
Shifa.
his book, that's
I've got it. If anybody wants to see it, I can bring it up.
It's mentioned in there. He has a chapter. So they actually become disbelievers according to their own principles.
Yeah.
They need to pass on the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, based on that tradition. The Prophet's cursing Muawiyah, for example, as you mentioned, but then again they'll say, oh no, it's not a curse. He's praying for them. So it makes you think, at what point, when the Prophet was actually cursing somebody, it was a prayer, and when it wasn't a prayer. So the whole thing is just,
they showed the Prophet as a highly confused person. Astaghfirullah, but that's what we see if we read the books. Well, then, and that's what the enemies of Islam.
I think this is one of the reasons why, as well, later on, people, when they start reading this hadith, I always encourage people to read their books. Read the books, read them for yourself, and see what type of images tainted about, the Holy Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him. It really it brings a tear to your eye. I mean, I have friends of mine who started to study hadith, and later they ended up becoming Quranists. They had to reject the hadith, and I'm sure Ryan has something to say on that as well.
That's why all Quranists are Sunni. There's no Shia Quranist.
So I remember my point from before. It's really interesting if looking at these narrations that really seemingly downgrade the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it's funny, our opponents will often say that, we did as the Christians did and lift the imams to the state of godliness, and et cetera, which is absolute nonsense. But it's quite funny that with these schools of thought, they have these concept of anthropomorphism, right? Where they believe God has physical attributes. They also downgrade the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, he can, make mistakes, or, he's just human like everyone else. They've really made it more humanized. Like, he's just like all of us, you know what I mean? And it's quite funny because most of the converts to Islam at that time were, to my knowledge, previously mushriks. And you see the same kind of theme with pagan ideologies. So you had the Greek gods who would often make mistakes and, you know, do horrible acts and et cetera, could be tricked and all these kind of things. And at the same time, they have this concept for the Prophet and for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when it comes to the Sahaba, they do the complete opposite. And they lift them up, and they talk about us and infallibility, right? We don't believe that our imam sinned.
Sorry, Ryan. Do
Yeah.
you remember that tradition we were reading the other day, and I was mentioning to you about the Prophet lying in the bed? Do you remember that tradition?
Yeah.
I think it's worth actually mentioning it because.
Have you got it?
No, I don't have the tradition, but I'm sure you can give a bit of a background if you want, or I can.
I don't really want to have the dirtiness come from my mouth. To be honest.
Right, you're right. I agree with you. It's quite blasphemous and it's quite insulting.
Yeah.
To the Prophet.
But was it in Muslim? Or...
Yeah, I believe it's in Muslim.
Same Muslim, I know the tradition.
The one,
yeah, you know what we're talking about.
The one that exactly peace and blessings be upon him was lying in the bed, and then
he's giving advice whilst lying in bed about his private life.
Absolutely.
I think we digress slightly. Ryan, do you want to add anything else, or can I? I was going to make a point as well.
Well, yeah. When it comes to when I came to Islam, I started off as a Qurani. Now, when it comes to I meet someone they identify as a Muslim, I'm very blasé. But if they want to call themselves Muslim at the start, that's fine. If we get further into their beliefs and stuff like that, that's when things get a bit different. Like we have people doing takfir on smaller groups and other etc. or whatever. When I was a Qurani, I couldn't comprehend, because all the hadiths that I would obviously read would be Sunni hadiths. I could not comprehend how they were in line with the Quran. And this is what it is. So many people are becoming Quranists, especially in the West, right? And this is not a new movement. This is not a Western, we can't say that it's necessarily a Western invention, because it happened. There was a big movement that happened in the Indo-Pak subcontinent ages ago, but they all do it because these hadiths, and a lot of these have come from Sunni schools as well. These hadiths are just disgusting. True. And you're right. You never see Shia Quranists, because the whole concept doesn't make any sense, right? But at the same time, it's so funny. Like the Quranists will always usually be Rashidun followers, right? They believe in the concept of the four righteously guided caliphs, or they believe. I've seen some horrible, disgusting things, and it's all just based on conjecture. And it's because these hadiths are so seemingly evil. They're so evil. These are the same hadiths that ISIS get their inspiration from.
True.
You know what I mean? And some schools, the mainstream Sunni Muslims, not all Sunnis are bad. I've got friends that are Salafi. I've got friends that are all different types. No problem, right? But when it's the same books that the scumbags of the earth, ISIS and all these other groups are using. They're using the same books, and they're getting away with the same stuff. They say, no, they're Khawarij. They're not the same like us. Well, no, they're using the same books. They believe in the same leaders as you. I don't understand what you're
No, but bro, it comes back to the point. Okay, you're saying the Khawarij, but then you've taken your traditions from the Khawarij. You know what I mean? Exactly. Look at the irony here. See the irony? Oh, they're Khawarij. We distance ourselves. Fine. Okay, but you narrate your traditions from these individuals. When you go through the chain of transmission of your hadith, you'll find that some of these individuals were Khawarij. So, so Hassan Bari, should we go on?
Can I just add one other point? On this very issue. I remember once I bumped into a Salafi that lives very near me on the train, and we were obviously knows I'm a Shia. Just as a little dig before he got off the train, he mentioned a quote of Ibn Taymiyyah, and I'll open this up to our discussion. He said an interesting thing. He said that if you ask the Jews who the best of the people are, they'll say the companions of Moses. If you ask the Christians who the best of the people are, they'll say that the companions of Jesus. Okay, but if you ask the Shias, they'll say the worst of the people are the companions of the Prophet. Okay, so he's a bit of mockery. But brothers, if you look at the examples of the Quran, the companions of Moses were not particularly good people. They're the ones who turned away from Hazrat Musa and ended up worshiping a calf, a golden calf. And the companions of Jesus deserted him. So what sort of example is that anyway? It's a poor example if you're going to mock Shias on that basis. What do you think?
True.
Yeah, agreed?
To my knowledge, I didn't know if it was all the companions of Nabi Isa alayhi salam that deserted him. But that's just from my understanding. But yeah, there always seems to be there's once again, history repeats itself, and there's this consistency that we can see if we just look back at history, right?
Yeah.
And the I believe the Sunnis have a hadith where it says the Ummah will be divided into 73 sects, the Christian community will be divided into 72 sects, and the Jews will be divided into 71 sects, each of them having one sect that will be saved from the fire, right?
Yeah.
So you always see that the saved group is always the minority, according to their own books.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So I've seen them to try to divide the 73 sects into like all the old extinct Shia sects that possibly could exist. And then Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, which is just this huge umbrella label.
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense, man. It's inconsistent.
Yeah, but bro, you know, again, if we're talking about sects, that, you know, at the end of the day, we can claim we're Sunnis as well, right? It's just a term, just a term.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know, as we were discussing earlier, they divide into different schools of theology, which essentially do takfir on each other.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, you know what? This goes into another interesting point. Do Shias do takfir on non-Shia people? Hassan Bahari, did you want to say something on that? Because I think that's an important point. Because
that's a good point. I think, Said, if you start on that, and then I'll expand on that point, because obviously there's different understanding of it. So yeah, clarify that point, please.
So essentially, imama for us. Sorry, brothers. While we're speaking, if possible, could we mute the mics because there's a slight bit of disturbance in between. I think we've got somebody who's joined us. I don't know who that is. Don't know who that is who joined us, but
what, do we have a guest speaker? This wasn't in the script.
This definitely was in the script. I think maybe some slight.
See, this is what happens when you have live recording, live shows. You know, anything can happen.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. It's sorted. So yeah. So coming back to the point, obviously, imama for us is something which is an integral part of our religion. No, we do not consider anyone who does not believe in imama to be a non-Muslim. You know, of course, anyone who recites the Shahada, you know, they enter into the fold of Islam and they're protected under the laws of Islam. In fact, even the hypocrites during the time of the Prophet, may peace and blessings be upon him, were protected under Islamic law as well. Yeah, such as the case of Abdullah ibn Ubay, the chief of the hypocrites. Technically speaking, he was still called a Sahaba. The Prophet referred to him as a Sahaba, and he said, you know, that he even stopped one of his companions from killing him. So yes, you know, when it comes to the issue of imama, it's something which is fundamental to our belief. But anyone who recites the Shahada is still a Muslim. However, when we go into the technicalities of things, like for example, even if one recites the Shahada, can he still be a Muslim and worship a cow? No, because it goes against the very fundamentals of Tawheed. Likewise, when we talk about Tawheed, can somebody still be a Muslim if they believe Allah's in hellfire? No. So, yes, I mean, again, are we in a position to declare the kafir on someone? No, we're not, because in order to declare the kafir on someone, you need a whole court system in place. You know, these type of decisions are not made by layman people. They're made by jurists who sit there, and by consensus, majority of our scholars today consider all, you know, they consider, as long as somebody believes in the Shahada and doesn't go against the fundamentals of Islam, you know, they're still considered to be Muslims. Hassan Bahari, you've disappeared a bit. Yeah.
Maybe to what you said, we also have that in our narrations, don't we? Al-Kafi, the Imam alayhim salam clearly distinct between Islam and Iman. Okay, that's one thing we have to admit. We say, okay, the mu'min is only the one who accepts the wilaya. They say, okay, you have Islam. There was one hadith where a Nasibi, even a Nasibi from Syria, he comes to debate Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and he loses the debate, and then he says, okay, I want to become your follower. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, yes, I accept your followership. And he says, today I became Muslim. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, no, you've been a Muslim before. Today you became mu'min. Islam is what regulates your relationships with other people and everything. And I mean, I think it's important.
Just to clarify, that nawasib actually was a nawasib based on ignorance. You see?
Yeah, true.
So So this is something
True.
that,
Of course, yeah, of course.
the
Thank
thing
you.
is now, when it comes to somebody who's ignorant about imama, their case is quite different, right?
Yeah, true.
So yeah, I mean, Hassan Bari, I don't know if you want to say anything before we move
I
on.
think I could also. I think Brother Daniel mentioned that the concept of a Mormon. We've got a tradition that's in Mustadrak al-Hakim, and it's Sahih, where the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his family says this narration that three things have been revealed to me about Ali: that he is Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, wa Qaid al-Ghur al-Muhajjalin. So obviously he's the commander of the faithful, the Imam of the pious, and the leader of the bright-faced people on the Day of Judgment. So essentially, if we've got the title of Amir al-Mu'mineen, we would connect that. Obviously, Imam Ali being the leader, those that follow him are Mu'mins.
So can we carry on, bro? Next thing.
I
Okay, next
just got
question.
a quick point.
Sorry,
I
Ryan.
got a quick point. Sorry, regarding this concept of we have to really look at the etymological and the roots of these words to truly understand them. You know what I mean? When we have a Muslim, right? The mim used as a prefix is like to represent one of. So when we have a Muslim, it's one of Islam, one of submission. Yeah. So likewise with a mu'min, it's one of Iman. Iman, if you look at how it's used in the Quranic context throughout the whole kitab, it's referring to, it's often translated as belief and faith and etc. This to me is very strange. We need to really bring it back to what it truly means, and it's about entrusting something, right? I believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referred to as al-mu'min, right? The securer, right? So a mu'min is essentially someone who is given ilm, right? Given knowledge, and they secure it, right? So you can be a Muslim and not really, you could be someone who identifies as a Muslim and then be a mu'min, right? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. And then you can be a munafiq, etc. But you can also be like a jahil and not understand anything. You identify it. And that's look, at the end of the day, most people, like most laymen are like that. They don't know what they just culturally adopt something or whatever, etc. But so the whole point is, with the mu'mineen, we are given the ilm and we secure it. If we were to squander it, right, through nifaq, right, which is to essentially the word, it gets translated as hypocrisy because of how it ends up being, right? It's when you squander something. So a munafiq is one who has this knowledge and then squanders it, squanders the name and squanders that knowledge. Okay, so yeah, anyone can be you call yourself La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah, you're a Muslim, right? But it's once what you do with that title and what you do with that knowledge from then on is whether you become a mu'min or a munafiq. And yeah, I don't think I really have anything else to say on that point.
But should we carry on?
No, I think to be honest, I think that covers that perfectly. I think we need to. We're almost 2 hours in now. Should we go to the next question?
Yeah. Let's start cracking through these quickly.
Exactly. We've got quite a bit there, so I'm wondering we might have to have a second part. I think the way things are going, as I predicted. Anyway, next question. To be honest, this is more of an in-house one now. The question is: does the concept of azadari create a negative?
So what's azadari? You didn't.
Mourning rituals for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Does it create a negative image of Shia Islam? Sayyid Ali, if you want to open it up first, because obviously we've got two brothers which have come to Islam, and we can ask their perceptions as well. But have you got anything to comment first, Sayyid Ali, on this point? Sure.
So when we're talking about mourning rituals, the Shias, they mourn for the 12. For the 11 imams alayhi salam, because we believe all the imams were martyred. Either they were killed by the sword or they were poisoned. So what we do is annually, according to the day they passed away, we commemorate the deaths. So we would attend gatherings in which we would remember their lives, and some of us would when the account of their death is read from the pulpits, we would grieve, and later we would partake in perhaps chest beating rituals. When it comes to the martyrdom of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, yes, there are some Shia Muslims out there who would partake in self-flagellation, where they would perhaps use chains which have blades on them. They would use swords. Again, this kind of comes into a cultural practice which, when it comes to mourning itself, is something which is kind of evolved over time. So the Shia perspective on this generally is that the jurists are divided in two groups. One group deem it permissible, another group deem it impermissible. But again,
which thing, Sayyid? Are we talking about bloodletting individual?
Yeah, bloodletting. Yes.
Just that. Okay.
Yeah, just bloodletting. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, when it comes to the issue of chest being, generally, there's no objection. There's no objection on that. Okay.
Absolutely.
In fact, we can very easily prove examples where Sahaba themselves beat the chest. I mean, there's a hadith which is mentioned in Sunni works which talks about how the wife of the Prophet, Aisha, says that when the Prophet passed away, she beat her chest and she beat her face, and crying and
and that's
wailing
the
and mourning.
generations say.
It's we got Brother Razar here who's joined us now.
I think he's been too busy celebrating his brother's birthday. I think. What's going on?
Yes, team. Assalamu alaikum.
What's
going on, brothers? Give me 2 minutes. You look carry on. I'm gonna just jump in. Give me 2 minutes, yeah.
Please mute your mic.
Yeah, you're only 2.5 hours late, so it's not a problem.
Yeah, it's Pakistani timing, bro. Get used to
it. So, when we come back to mourning, so when it comes to chest beating, generally speaking, there's not an issue with that within the Shia school of thought. The jurists, they deem this permissible. When it comes to self-flagellation, in terms of when it comes to using, perhaps swords or chains, etc., there's a disagreement. Some group of scholars believe that it's allowed. Some group of scholars say it's not allowed. The ones who say it's not allowed, they forbid it on the grounds of image. Okay, so they say, look, we shouldn't be doing this because it doesn't really create a good image on Shiism. Nevertheless, this is a big topic, and I think to do justice to this, you would need to do a few shows. But non-Muslims, they have this in some cultures and communities, like Christians in the Easter period. They also
Philippines,
in the Philippines, they partake in self-flagellation practices. Obviously,
even crucifixions.
Even crucifixions. But again, they don't do it for the same reason why we do it for. They do it for repenting, for
repentance.
For repentance and purifying themselves from sin. Obviously, that's not the reason why we do it. We, when it comes to expressing grief, everyone has their own way who does it. Everyone does it differently. Some people cry, some people can't cry because it's not in them. Some people are not emotional enough to make themselves cry. Some people partake in these self-flagellation practices using swords and chains. Some don't. But I mean, in this day and age, with the social media we have, with what's the things we have like now in terms of technology and stuff, it's gone beyond that point where I'd say we can actually hide these things away. And I think rather than going out there and causing differences amongst Shias ourselves, I think it's more important to educate people as to why certain people partake in it, even though they might not necessarily agree. But there's always two sides of a story, and I think they should present their arguments.
Say that. Can I just mention one point, because I'm pretty certain that there's certain individuals who run other channels will probably pick up on this point, and they always exploit it. Every time it's sort of Ashura days, they'll have these images of bloody images and say, look, what sort of representation of Islam is this? To be honest, brother, we should say to these people, when we're talking about to a non-Shia crowd now here, we know who these individuals are. Considering that your sect has got individuals which partake in acts like suicide bombing and decapitating people on videos, that should be the least of your worries. Talking about bad image when you've got people in your camp.
That's a good point.
Partaking in these types of acts, you should really keep quiet.
That's a good point. You never see them really condemn beheadings, do you?
No, you don't. They don't worry about that giving Islam a bad name. Videos about ISIS beheading people, that doesn't give Islam a bad name.
Say display pictures. Nowadays, you got people with display pictures with well-known individuals who.
Absolutely.
What are you Shias doing so late up at night?
Exactly. No, it's a good point, though. Sorry, Rosemont. It's a good point. I mean, nowadays, there's individuals like in the Indian subcontinent, certain scholars which have been known for spreading sectarian hatred and have kind of been the firebrand speakers, which have led to created extremist takfiri groups, such as Sipai Sahaba in Pakistan. We've got individuals which use those sort of scholars' pictures as their sort of DP. So what can you say? On the one hand, they say we don't have any nexus with terrorism, but they're quite happy sort of using their sort of imagery, which is quite surprising.
So, brothers, do you want to add anything on the issue of mourning? And Daniel, do you want to come on?
Well, me personally, I like to read books about Christian mysticism, and this was totally normal in the medievals. They did even worse stuff. They did, and when I was younger, when I was a kid, and I see Shia Azadari and even Tadbir and stuff, it was really a powerful image to me. Somehow impressed me. I wanted to know more about that. Then I forgot that, and then I was a Sunni, and then I was indoctrinated, and then I said, "Oh, yeah, these stupid Shias," and didn't really think about it. But actually, it is a powerful image, and it can create interest also, because not everybody is disgusted. I mean, I'm not talking about people cutting their children. I'm not sure if this is a good idea, but I think it can be a good thing too. I think many people gain interest into Shiaism by that. Yeah. It's not. I mean, if you see that, you will ask yourself, why the hell are they doing that? Yeah, because Imam Hussein. Who is Imam Hussein? Why are they so sad, so grieved? And I don't know the exact. I would have a good German word for that, but so why do they do that to themselves? Because of one person, and then you want to know who this person is.
So Daniel, it's interesting. I saw a video not so long ago of a German brother, and he's not Muslim, but he saw this morning practice. He saw this procession. I think it was in Munich, I'm not too sure, and he was mesmerized by the power, the energy that he saw. But he actually partaked in the actual procession. And
say it. Can you fix your mic? Because I think your mic's stuffing up.
Can you hear me?
I thought it was on me. Yeah.
Sounds like always.
Yeah,
I couldn't hear it properly either.
Can you hear me now?
No, not really.
Can't hear you.
What's now? Better?
Nah.
No.
Okay. I'll let you guys carry on.
Daniel, you finished or?
Yeah, I'm finished.
All right. By the way, salam, Raz. So when it comes to the mourning practices that we, the Ithnashi community, have, the wide variety that we do have. Look, what actually scared me away from Tashayu, for especially the 12 school for a long time, was Tapia. You know what I mean? It is very confronting. Wow. And if you see, yeah, it is. And I saw you know, how people were hacking their backs. And I was actually showing my little brother, two of his friends who are both Christian. I was showing them videos of Tatbih yesterday, and for them it was just they just didn't get it. They knew about the Catholics who would do it. They're not Catholics, but they knew about how Catholics would do it. You can find people in Spain still doing it today, slapping their backs and etc. And obviously the aforementioned Philippines. But I was very staunchly against Tatbih. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, it has to come down to, when we understand Islam, it has to come down to naql and aql. And it's actually now got to the point where, through my further reading and trying to understand the community better, as I said before too, you know, when you become a Muslim, you're a Muslim, right? And you can have a level of jahl, right? But then you get given knowledge, and then it's what you do with it, right? So the more that I read and the more that I learned and the more that I debated with other Shia on this topic, I eventually had to just be like, okay, I can't. Where I'm coming from is not based on Islamic thought. It's not really based on scripture from our school. So I need to start being more aware of that. So it's still a hard pill for me to swallow, you know what I mean? Because it can be very gruesome. But at the end of the day, it's what the intention of the ones doing it, and whether or not it's based on anything that we have in our works. And for me, at the moment, I see that, you know, we have that. So, you know, if people want to do it, they can do it.
It's still bad.
Yeah.
Still bad. What's going on?
Maybe my microphone had enough for me today, I think.
I think so.
Understood microphone.
Can you hear me now? Is it still the same?
No.
No, it's a computer.
Yeah, it's my computer.
No, it's just your computer.
Never invest in what do you call it?
Say that. Is it still a problem?
I can't hear him.
I'm just thinking, Saidali, it's 2 hours. Should we wrap it up now? We can continue the next shows.
Yeah, we can touch on this topic in another video.
Because I think there's a lot of other things. There's a lot of questions that have come up. I'm wondering, because we're 2 hours in, should we leave it for now and do inshallah, come back to it next week? The remainder questions. What do you think, guys?
I wouldn't be angry about it. I have to work in a few hours anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. If we do that, inshallah, Dala. I mean, in terms of a conclusion, I mean, obviously we've had a very good discussion. Thank you very much to all of you, for your contributions. There's something that I wanted to point out, because there's been a lot of pressure has been placed on us of late. Brother Raza, you can also expand on this a little bit, where we seem to be getting a lot of interest where person X, person Y, person Z is coming out saying, why don't you debate us? And I just want to make a couple of points very clear that Bayat al-Ghadeer channel hasn't been set up as a debate channel. It was set up essentially, obviously we've got brothers which do go out at park and enter into discussions, but our purpose isn't to enter into debates with the whole world and its wife. But we need to understand that. Okay, we're not under any sort of compulsion that if somebody just stands up who we don't know and says debate me, we'll debate them. Okay, we need to make that point very, very clear. I think there's a lot of people seem to come to us and say, why aren't you debating so and so is coming forward and so is coming forward? That we are, that's not our duty to do so. So I think we just a point to clarify. Brothers, Brother Ryan, I think, do you want to say anything on that point?
Yeah, when it comes to the debating thing, I don't debate Ahlul Bidah, so.
Exactly, we've heard that as well. Yeah, exactly. That's also been said to us. Okay. Brother Raza, do you want to say anything on that point?
Yeah, Sayyid, you know what it is? First of all, Assalamu alaikum. Sorry, brothers, sister. I was well, no sisters, but anyway, sorry, brothers, man. I was late on this show. As you don't know, celebrating my brother's birthday, so just doing a quick bid'ah. You know how it is, just innovating as we do. So, as you were saying, Shaji, you were saying about this aspect of debating and etc. Yeah, man. Look, like obviously, I think there's certain people that might have. I don't know if they've got the wrong end of the stick, or they've, I don't know about their mentality or what their life, day job is, etc. But we're not here to literally debate the whole world. We do our thing here, we do our shows, we talk. We're normal people, man. Half of us are normal guys. We do our thing.
Half
we
of
work.
us?
We study. I would hope most of us. I would say if not all. We do our thing. We work. We study. We come out, we discuss, we do videos, educational. We like to, represent and let everyone know what Shiaism is about, etc. But we're not in no obligation to, start debating people, and especially people where, I don't really want to, because obviously we've got a big fan club and stuff, but I don't really want to, make the infamous famous. But I think what I will say is that we clearly have, we clearly have some cheerleaders that seem to want to follow every movement that we do. It's a bit. Bro, I'm not even.
It's like I'm not even.
Yeah, I feel a bit. Yeah, I swear, bro, it's a bit creepy. Wallah, like I swear, I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. It's a bit creepy. Like sometimes I'm like, bro, like it's one of those ones where I was watching something and I was like, if I say this, what are they gonna say? It's like these lot are like watching every movement I'm doing. It's a bit creepy, bro. It's like brothers and sisters, whoever's doing that. Look, man, do your thing. If you've got a point, make your point. Don't be obsessive, man. Like just do your thing, man, and live your life, man. Go out, get married, take your wife out. I don't know. Do something, man. Don't worry about us too much, man. We're just some deviant guys that do our thing, man. Don't worry about us too much. Inshallah, we'll keep doing our thing. You keep doing your thing. Exactly. But let's not get obsessive, man, because it's a bit creepy. Don't be creepy in it.
Okay. I think in terms of sorry, Brother Daniel, do you want to add anything on that point?
No, that's fine.
Okay. I mean, I think it really. If you're looking at, I try to avoid some of this, but some of these videos have been brought to my attention, and there's this kind of obsession to say, look, leave what these guys have got. They're liars, they're deviants. Look what we offer you. And I think really, for me, and I've said it to brothers before, we've already talked a little bit today about the concept of imam. Okay, it's logic, and obviously we had Brother Ryan and Brother Daniel also agreeing with us on this point. We've done previous shows on Tawheed. And obviously, inshallah, we're going to do further shows on Tawheed and prophethood and other concepts. Now, the thing is, these guys which have got these videos and they're regularly to be honest, their behaviour is a bit like, schoolgirls in a yard. They hear something funny, they went sort of chuckling. Their behaviour is very unusual. But in terms of delivery, okay, their main focus is taking us away, taking the Shia away and coming into their camp. Okay, fine. But the thing is that I always say is, listen, if you're going to take me away from what I believe, you've got to offer me something better. Agreed? All of you agree, brothers? Now, what on earth are you offering me? If I live in a small house, okay, very sort of congested, small 2-bed, say, my objective is, if I want to get somewhere better, I want to move into a bigger house, more space, somewhere that kids can play. I might have a garage, something that's more attractive to me, something that fits in my life. Okay, why on earth would I want to go to a house or that downgrades? Why want to go into 1-bed, which has got kind of leaky pipes, or the windows are broken? Do you understand me? Or people can just walk in and out. That's not going to attract me. Do you understand me? If you want to attract me, tell me what you offer. Isn't it? If you're selling me something which isn't better than what I've already got, what are you offering me? And to be honest, brothers, come on, let's. We've already talked about the doctrine of imams and it being logical. Okay, if you want me to enter a house where Yazid is your sixth Khalifa, okay, and you refuse to even curse him for what he did, okay, or if you're offering a kind of a concept of Tawheed where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has got curly hair, he doesn't have a beard, okay, and that's what the Prophet seen him, or you have this concept about all the other concepts of Tawheed that have been discussed, what are you offering me that's better? If you're not offering me anything that's better, what's the point? What are you trying to invite me to? What are you trying to take me away from? It's got to be something that interests me, that attracts me to say, okay, this guy is providing me an option which is better than Imam Ali. This guy is providing me a concept of Tawheed which is better than the first sermon of Najl Balagha. Is he doing that? That's what I say, brothers. I mean, what do you think? Anybody want to expand on that point?
Brothers, all I see is insults, man. I don't see any intellectuality coming from any side apart from just insults, man. And it's one of those ones that's never gonna attract people anyway. But I think one thing that I was gonna say was that a lot of people seem to be acting, I think, on the scene where, there was brothers saying, oh yeah, we want to speak and we want to have intellectual conversations, etc. But then those same people go on these shows and they mock and they, literally just violate and mock and take the piss. And it's like, you can't act like that for the camera in front of everyone else. You can't come speaker's corner and be like, oh yeah, we're very intellectual, we're gonna have intellectual dialogue, and then behind the scenes be this nasty kind of guy that just mocks people and just disrespects constantly, because it's like a two-faced mentality. Either you're a guy who actually is, me, wallahi, I'm not acting, bro. I am how I am. I'm not gonna turn off this camera and start, saying, oh yeah, I hate Sunnis, bro. I've got Sunni friends. I meet Sunnis, they know me. I'm still the same guy. It seems these people, they are literally hate preachers, and it's people that want to be associated with them. I think they have to be called out on it. That I don't want no one coming up to me and saying, oh, I'm actually a nice guy, I would like to have a dialogue. But then behind the scenes, they're linked to these nasty kind of people who it seems like their obsession is with Shiaism. Like it's actually quite unhealthy. So I think we need to make that clear. People need to be consistent in their approach, I think.
Brother Daniel, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely. Because when I was somewhere in between of Sunni and Shia, I was about maybe okay. About what you said, I said, okay, if there is something better than Sunnism, I will leave it. Maybe the Shia are correct, and I didn't know very much. And then I got a little bit into this dialogue and also debate stuff, which was going on, and I compared. And I've seen that, especially the Salafi Wahhabi sides, this is just insulting. This was what Brother Rada said, that they are just up to mocking and making foolish jokes out of people with no real content, no intellectual basis they can offer to anybody.
Oh, you know what, Brother Daniel, I'm sorry to cut you off here. This is very important. Yeah, I hope you lot have mentioned this. Have you lot, discussed this aspect of basically, when those ones where you don't really have any sincerity or allegiance to any real sect, all you're doing is anti-Shia bashing. So example, sometimes you're like, oh, I'll take this Sunni position to refute the Shia. Sometimes I'll take this Sunni position to refute the Shia. You basically don't have any methodology. You will jump on anything just to refute us. You don't really care what you are. So sometimes you're a Salafi, sometimes you're from the Ash'ari, sometimes you're from another school, sometimes you're a Sufi, meaning basically anything to do, you'll join any group that refutes the Shias. It seems like we're dealing with this. You say that again, say it.
Yeah, it's like a funny sect. Yes.
Yeah, funny. It seems like we're dealing with these new people who are like I was used to discussing with people like, you know, I'm a Ashari, I'm a Sufi, I'm a Salafi, no problem. But these kind of people that it seems to be attracting are people like, it seems like their whole life, their life cause is just to refute Shias at no matter what cost. Sometimes the Quran will become eternal, sometimes it's not eternal. Like meaning anything to refute the Shias. It's like you don't have a back. Like it's like me saying, oh, I don't mind. I don't, as long as I win the argument, even if it means I say, oh, I don't really believe that imams are masoom, because there is a minority opinion amongst Shias amongst that. It's like I can take any position just to refute them. It just doesn't seem sincere, and it seems like the people that are doing it really are just not. They don't really have a methodology, and I feel like we've got a new sect out there.
Yeah, that's what they do again and again. They will say, well, there's ikhtilaf on this issue. There's ikhtilaf. You can be Sunni and you can believe this and you can believe that. Then, okay, man, what is the issue in debating then anyway?
Yeah, exactly. We might as well just not debate it.
Yeah.
So what's the point? Brother Ryan, anything else?
There's clearly an obsession here. There's clearly an obsession, and it's unhealthy. So, brothers, I think get some help and, you know, just leave us alone, innit?
Brother Ryan, anything?
Nah, man, we've flogged this dead horse enough today.
Exactly.
We've answered so many questions, bro, and I think there's obviously a lot of things that we can touch on in later videos more in depth.
Inshallah.
But we managed to smash out of the park a few of the questions. I'm sure there's going to be some videos popping up later based on things we said. That's great, just more attention for us. And and thanks to everyone that's supporting the channel as well, and also those who share our videos and make other videos on them.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all the brothers tonight, and Jazakallah for everybody who listened in. Inshallah, we'll probably have some more hangouts next week, and we'll go from there. Assalamu alaikum.